So, trying to reflect a little bit about the day together, guys. What do we want to do with this? In my view, we want to bring home ideas, excitement, knowledge to start thinking about what we should do. So I have if I go back to my presentation, more or less where let's see. Different clicker. Easy. This is where I started off. Let's use this a little bit to think about what different themes we talked about today. And this is the context of not only are we, do we need all this, but we need to figure out how to organize this. And when I say organize, I mean from the people to the processes, to the steering, to the governance, to the technology, to the information management. So what we have seen in these two rooms today is actually hitting a lot of these topics. So we talked about the analytics and value chain purpose. We made a distinction between, standard BI. We talked about predictive, but the main story today, how do we make operational analytics? Or like Håkan talked about, how do we embed analytics and automate analytics? So this is, in my view, that this value chain story. Take it into a business rule engine to really go the whole way. This is digital. This is truly digital. Going back, process to fit the value chain purpose. Clearly different to be agile, to be explorative, to fail fast, to fail cheap. Different story to when you then want to build it back again, robust, operationalize, automate. And we use the word going from predictive modeling to building algorithms, building business rule engines. Technology and capabilities to cover the digital value chain. Started off early today talking about industry, big data and industry. And here is the big revolution when the machine starts producing data. That's really when this exponential curve that's Ingo was showing in ICA really takes off. But this is the sensor part. Then we need to have what we saw in the LinkedIn story today. What's the data assembly story? How do we get the data together? We need to move on to that. Where do we do our analytics? Where do we build our business rule engine? And where's the front end? Where's the visualization? And this topic, if I talk about Vattenfall, who has very different lines of business, driving a nuclear power plant, or retail sales on the internet. We can't have one size fits all in our opinion, but on the other hand, we don't want to create data puddles. So how do we centralize some topics, and how do we create things that in the front end is more flexible and more use case oriented? Moving on. Information management and data governance. We had a couple of topics on this one. We have more coming up in the summit where we will basically spend the whole conference on this topic. So it's this core topic, technology, yes, business, yes, but then ultimately data content. If you can't get it to match up, you're in trouble. This is my biggest problem. I have ERP data on wind park level. And then I have SCADA data, tech data on turbine level. And then I'm trying to do predictive maintenance. I need to make it fit. I have my ERP data managed and governed by finance, the data principles. And I have this retail side managing the customer definition or the contracts. So, simple stuff. I want to do profitability analysis. I want to understand who my profitable customers are. I need to make that data connect, and we need to have the context. Then we talk about the team with the cross-functional capabilities. We heard about the data scientist. Robert, excellent presentation. Thank you very much. Very cool stuff. Data, that's the techie guys. Science, having a scientific approach when we look at problems. But that's not all. When we talk about this, it's sort of a journey to have, you can talk about technology affinity, competences around tech, the hardcore building, setting up the iron, setting up the software, integrating the data. Then we have the analytics capability, the data affinity. For Vattenfall, we talk about data from the topic of analytics, but we actually also talk about data from the topic of data governance. Master data management, metadata management, how do we make sure that we have the right quality and we can combine data? When do we need to have sort of really strong data quality, and when can we have fuzzy data? So data. And then you move on. Business affinity. Need to understand the business. Thank you for pointing that out, very many people of you today. If you don't understand the core business, you're lost. If you put data scientists, doesn't matter how bright they are, in a room with a screen and trying to make them work, it will take them forever compared to getting them on the floor. But then I don't think it doesn't stop with business affinity. We heard something else. Customer affinity. We heard fritidsresor, understanding the customer journey, ultimately understanding what works. And then I can take it one step further. Usability affinity, UX affinity. So there's like a lot of different core competences going into this value chain now, that they need to work really cross-functional together. It's not really, moving, dropping the stone somewhere else. We need to get these guys working together. Quite different, to a standard, enterprise, traditional silo-oriented type thinking. IT supply over here, business over there, the math guys over there, if you have any. Working them together. What else? Manage and steer information, digital value chain capability technology as a strategic business investment. Think about the Ericsson investment. When you go into a large enterprise, all of a sudden, who owns the data? Who owns the platform? How can we do it? Typical traditional industry problems that you face when you start doing this kind of work. And then all of a sudden, what we're coming back to over and over again, I think it's really a trend in the last conferences, business-driven, business-driven, business-driven. It will fail, I've heard a couple of times today, if IT is driving this. And this is a real problem, because the business are not... The business is not mature enough, and the IT doesn't understand the business. The business roadmap is here, the IT roadmap is somewhere else. So we have a huge challenge. Use some takeaways. So final concluding remarks. And this last slide is more to be sent out, so it's a little bit detailed text. But I was thinking like this. When I at a conference, typically you think you get away with more answers. But I find, interestingly enough, the more I learn, the more questions I have. And the tougher the questions get, what is really tricky. So I want to show you the questions that I'm struggling with, to help you to, start thinking about them really soon. So information as a strategic asset. What does that really mean? 2 examples, really small text, so I'll read it out. How to set up information management to break through our data silos and put the right data with our decision makers and users. You recognize this? How do we do that? Ultimately, put the data in front of the business people at their fingertips, easy to use, from all these silos. Other dimension, how to coordinate investments in technology to fit for purpose, for data assembly, analytics, omnichannel, robotics, IoT, the digital value chain. How does this look like, and how do I get the company to go in the same direction? We want to use Hadoop. I really prefer Azure. By the way, don't we use Click or and then we have all technologies at Vattenfall, but not critical mass to sustain them all. Next topic, innovation leadership. So we talked about innovation. Ingo told us you can go home and die if you don't do this. I agree with him. But how do I do innovation in Vattenfall when we're heavily losing money based on that the prices is going down? How do I do that when our operating result was quite good, but with our write-off we made 28 billion loss? So then I talk about these topics. How to drive innovation under severe CapEx and OpEx constraints. How do I do that? How do I pull the gas and the brake at the same time? And then I take the next one. All right, so we need to be lean. We need to do innovation lean. So how do I steer that? How do I set up the processes, the leadership, so we can accelerate innovation in a lean and smart way? The fail fast type concepts, the way to sort of start in with a lot of good ideas, but weeding out the shit early. Capability shift. So we are talking here about a lot of competencies. So hardcore, how many here have a lot of Hadoop technicians at home? How many are really skilled in IoT? How to get competencies around data and analytics everywhere, we figured that out. We need to have the analysts close to the business, but at the same time coordinated and using the same principles in how to balance this business-centric story with the central coordinated story. In Vattenfall, it's like a pendulum. Now everything is centralized, business-centric, and everybody is confused in the middle. How to attract and embed competences in innovation lifecycle management. That's a nice one. So how do I embed innovation in a traditional company? Diversity, start hiring freaks. What do I do? I think you should. I think that's part of the answer, actually. I was not joking. And then capability shift around how we run our processes. Bimodal IT is an example. Use to the waterfall principle, demand management, IT supply, and now we need to do something else. But we cannot only do that because I need to think about safety for my power plants. So I need to do both. And then last one. How do you organize the company when the digital value chain is the core and not the physical value chain? What does that mean? Starting with the steering. How do I go from steering a super tanker to steering like a big sailboat, a big yacht, or maybe many small motorboats, hundreds of motorboats rather than a super tanker? What does that mean? How do I balance this central coordination, data management, data governance, one data lake, one technology investment in some areas with the business-centric view of if you have many business lines? How to organize the new talent needed, locally or centrally? Ericsson? Centrally, yeah? Virtually? I don't know. All depends on the context of your business. Do you have one global business model like McDonald's? You could do it in one way. If you run a conglomerate like GE, you probably do it in a different way. So, just want to leave you with those kind of questions. How many working in an enterprise environment? How many would say they work in a traditional business? So these questions you all have. I promise you. So from my side, I really want to thank everyone for this great event.